What would you do if the person ordering you to humiliate yourself was smiling for the cameras while quietly reminding you that your sister's life depended on your silence? The microphone was hot. The red light was on. The house was full. Rachel Miller felt it before she heard it. That subtle pressure in the chest, the kind that comes when the air changes. When a room full of people leans forward at once, not with kindness, but with appetite. The charity gala at the Hawthorne Grand Theater had reached its polished midpoint. Crystal chandeliers burned overhead. Donors in tailored suits sat shoulder to shoulder with city officials, hospital board members, retired judges, and a few familiar faces from television. The kind of crowd that clapped on cue, the kind that believed they were here for the right reasons. On stage, Lauren Whitmore stood perfectly still, one hand wrapped around the microphone, the other resting lightly against her rib cage the way she had been trained decades ago. 58 years old, legendary voice, impeccable control. Her smile was practiced warm and just a fraction too slow. Behind the curtain, Rachel tightened her grip on the mop handle. She had been trying to stay invisible. That was always the goal. Move when no one was looking. Clean what others spilled. Leave no trace. At 55, invisibility had become less a choice and more a survival skill. The stage manager whispered, "Stand by," and brushed past her without making eye contact. Rachel's eyes stayed on the floor. The scuffed black shoes. The faint smell of disinfectant. Her pulse beat loud in her ears. Then Lauren's voice floated backstage, smooth as glass. "And before we continue," Lauren said to the audience, "I want to take a moment to recognize the people you never see. The ones who keep this place standing." Applause, polite, automatic. Rachel felt her stomach drop. Lauren tilted her head, listening to the room as if gauging its weight. "Rachel Miller," she said clearly, "would you come up here for a moment?" Rachel froze. Her name hit the air like a dropped plate. Too loud, too exposed. She hadn't told anyone her full name. Not to the stage crew, not to payroll. Just Miller. First name only. That was how she liked it. A hand touched her elbow. The assistant. Young, nervous. "She means you," the girl whispered. Rachel's mouth went dry. She thought of Emily, the cardiology consult scheduled for next week. The letter from the foundation stamped under review. The unspoken truth that one bad note in the wrong direction could send everything crashing down. She stepped forward. The light swallowed her whole. From the audience, she must have looked exactly as she felt. Small. Out of place. A woman in a janitor's uniform standing beneath chandeliers older than her career. Lauren turned toward her, smile widening. "Thank you for everything you do," she said, arms sliding around Rachel's shoulders. The touch was firm, possessive. Her lips moved closer to the mic, but her eyes locked on Rachel's face. "Don't forget where you are," Lauren murmured, too low for the crowd, too clear for Rachel to miss. "And don't forget who decides what help gets approved." Rachel's breath caught. Lauren pulled back, laughing lightly. The sound carried perfectly through the speakers. "Rachel here has been with this theater for years," she told the audience. "Hardworking, dedicated." And apparently she paused, eyes flicking down and back up. She used to sing. A ripple of interest moved through the room. Rachel felt heat creep up her neck. Lauren's tone softened, almost playful. "Why don't you show us?" she said. "Just a few bars, for fun." The word fun landed wrong. Heavy, sharp. From the control booth above, Michael Harris leaned forward in his chair. He had not been watching the stage. Not really. At 62, Michael had learned to read rooms through data, not faces. He was here as a formality. His company handled the live stream infrastructure, servers, backups, redundancy protocols. Boring things that only mattered when they failed. But his monitor had just flagged something odd. A spike. Vocal stress, not in Lauren's voice, in the audio feed behind it. He adjusted his headset, replayed the last few seconds. Lauren's whisper came through again. Clean. Undeniable. Michael's jaw tightened. On stage, Rachel swallowed. She could feel the eyes on her now. Curious. Expectant. Not cruel yet, but ready. "I'm not a performer," Rachel said softly. Lauren laughed. "Oh, honey, this is a room full of friends. Right, everyone?" Laughter. Louder this time. Rachel's hands trembled at her sides. She caught herself, forced them still. She thought of the years she had spent teaching herself not to flinch, of the nights she sang quietly in kitchens and hospital waiting rooms, of the voice she had learned to bury because it had once cost her everything. "I don't sing anymore," she said. Lauren leaned in, voice still sweet. "Just a note. That's all." A pause. Somewhere in the audience, a man cleared his throat. Someone shifted uncomfortably. The air felt tighter. Up in the booth, Michael stood. He didn't storm out. He didn't shout. He walked with purpose, already signaling the technical director beside him. The younger man looked up confused. "Stand by," Michael said quietly. "Do not adjust anything without my signal." "What's going on?" the director asked. Michael didn't answer. He was watching Rachel's face on the monitor now, the way her jaw clenched, the way she inhaled through her nose slow and controlled like someone bracing for impact. On stage, Lauren lifted the microphone toward Rachel. Rachel didn't take it. She looked out over the audience instead. Past the lights, past the donors, past the applause waiting to happen. Her voice when she spoke again was steady. "If I do this," she said, "it won't be for laughs." A murmur moved through the crowd. Lauren's smile flickered. Just for a second. "Of course," Lauren said quickly. "We're all here to support one another." Rachel nodded once. A small motion. Final. Michael exhaled slowly. He reached for his phone and typed a message to the event coordinator. Short, direct. No drama. Possible on-air coercion detected. Advise immediate review. Prepare to isolate live vocals if needed. He looked back at the screen as Rachel stepped toward the microphone. The room held its breath. Rachel wrapped her fingers around the metal. It was cold, familiar, heavier than she remembered. She closed her eyes, and somewhere deep beneath the layers of fear, habit, and silence, something old stirred. Not the song itself, not yet, just the knowledge that whatever came next would change everything. Rachel didn't start singing. That alone unsettled the room. The microphone hovered inches from her mouth, Lauren's manicured fingers still wrapped around its base as if she could guide the sound out by force. The pause stretched. Too long for comfort. Too long for a joke. A few people shifted in their seats. Someone coughed. The chandeliers hummed faintly with electricity. Rachel opened her eyes. She didn't look at Lauren. She looked past her into the dark beyond the footlights, where the audience dissolved into a single moving shadow. Faces blurred together. Power always looked like that from this angle. A mass. Impersonal. Hungry. "I was told not to," Rachel said. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The room leaned in. Lauren blinked. Not to what she asked, smile tightening at the corners. "Not to sing," Rachel replied. "Not here. Not ever." A ripple moved through the front rows. Confusion, interest. A few raised eyebrows. This wasn't in the program. Lauren laughed again, sharper this time. "Well, I'm giving you permission," she said lightly. "Consider this a safe space." Safe. Rachel almost smiled. Up in the control booth, Michael Harris felt the word land like a dropped knife. He watched the audio levels spike, not from volume, but from tension. He had seen arguments on stage before: political donors, divorces, public apologies gone wrong. This was different. This had weight. On stage, Rachel shifted her stance. She stood straighter now, shoulders back, the posture of someone who had stopped trying to disappear, safe for who she asked. The laughter didn't come this time. Lauren's eyes flicked briefly toward the wings where the event coordinator stood, frozen headset half off. Lauren turned back fast. "Rachel," she said, lowering her voice. "We're live." "I know," Rachel said. "That's why I'm being careful." The word careful carried something underneath it. A warning. Lauren adjusted her grip on the microphone and angled it fully toward Rachel as if forcing the moment forward would regain control. "You wanted to sing once," she said. "Didn't you?" Rachel's throat tightened. The memory rose uninvited. A smaller room, cheap carpet, a producer tapping a pencil against glass. The promise that this was just a demo, just a starting point. "I wanted to be heard," Rachel said. Lauren smiled. "Then here you are." Rachel finally turned to face her. For the first time, Lauren saw it. Not fear, not gratitude. Something steadier, something harder. "You already heard me," Rachel said. "A long time ago." The room went quiet. Michael leaned closer to his monitor. He replayed the waveform from earlier. The whisper. The threat. The casual cruelty wrapped in charm. He felt a familiar anger rise, the kind that came when systems designed to amplify voices were used to erase them instead. On stage, Lauren's smile held, but her eyes darkened. "I think you're confused," she said. "This isn't about the past. This is about tonight, about helping people." Rachel nodded slowly. "That's what I thought too, until you reminded me what help costs." Lauren's jaw tightened. A few people in the audience glanced at each other now. The older couples, the retired nurses, the former union men who had learned over decades how to recognize power pushing too hard. "This isn't appropriate," Lauren said, her voice dropping. "You're putting me in a position." Rachel let out a breath. "You put me in one first." Silence pressed in from all sides. From the booth, Michael spoke quietly into his headset. "Prepare to isolate the live feed," he said. "Stand by." The director looked at him. "On whose authority?" Michael said. "And yours, if this turns into a lawsuit." The director hesitated, then nodded. On stage, Lauren lifted her chin. "Rachel," she said, switching tactics, warmth flooding back into her tone, "no one wants to see you uncomfortable. If you don't want to sing, that's fine. We can move on. Move on." Rachel thought of Emily's name printed on hospital forms, thought of the foundation logo at the bottom of the page, thought of how easily people said, "move on," when they were standing on solid ground. "I didn't say I wouldn't sing," Rachel said. Lauren's eyes lit up. "Then let's do it," she said quickly, turning to the audience. A moment of courage. "Isn't that what we're here for?" Applause started uncertain at first, then growing as people followed the cue. They always did. Rachel raised a hand. The clapping faltered. "I said I'd sing," she repeated. "I didn't say how." Lauren frowned. "I don't understand." "You will," Rachel said. She took the microphone fully this time. Lauren's fingers resisted for half a second before letting go. Rachel closed her eyes again. Not to disappear, to focus. She didn't choose a song Lauren was known for. She didn't choose anything from the radio. She chose something older, simpler. A melody that had existed long before contracts and clauses and ownership disputes. A folk hymn her mother used to hum while washing dishes. The first note came out rough, unpolished, real. It filled the space differently than a performance did. It didn't soar. It settled, low and steady, vibrating through the wood of the stage and into the seats. The room stilled. Rachel sang without looking at anyone, without reaching for approval. The sound wasn't perfect. It cracked once briefly, then recovered. It sounded like breath, like age, like truth. Up in the booth, Michael felt his throat tighten. The audio levels steadied, clean. No backing track, no enhancement. Lauren stood frozen. Halfway through the verse, Rachel stopped. The silence that followed was heavier than the applause had been. That voice, Rachel said quietly, eyes still closed, was never meant to win awards. It was meant to keep people alive. She opened her eyes and looked straight into the crowd. I sang like that in hospital rooms, she continued. In kitchens, in cars parked outside emergency entrances. I sang when no one was watching, and I was told it didn't matter, that it wasn't mine to keep. Lauren shook her head slightly. This is not what we agreed to, she said. Rachel turned to her. You never asked. Lauren stepped closer, voice low, urgent. You're crossing a line. Rachel met her gaze. So did you. Up in the booth, Michael made the call. Cut all non-essential feeds, he said. Leave only the primary mic. The director's fingers hovered, then moved. The subtle hum beneath the stage vanished. Lauren inhaled sharply. She felt it immediately. The absence, the safety net gone. She forced a laugh and turned to the audience. I think emotions are running high, she said. Let's take a breath. Rachel didn't move. Lauren, she said calmly, sing. The word hit like a slap. Lauren stared at her. Excuse me. You asked me to sing, Rachel said. Now it's your turn. A murmur swept the room. Lauren's smile faltered. Just enough. I'm the performer here, she said. So am I, Rachel replied. Or I was, before you. The sentence landed hard. From the back row, someone stood. An older man, a donor. He didn't clap, he didn't speak. He just watched, arms crossed, waiting. Lauren swallowed. She glanced toward the booth, toward the band pit, anywhere but Rachel. The microphone in her hand felt heavier now. She sang. The first line wavered, not enough to fail, enough to be noticed. The second line strained. The high note cracked sharp and unmistakable. A gasp rippled through the audience. Rachel didn't react. She just watched, not with triumph, with recognition. Lauren stopped, breath shallow. The acoustics are off, she said quickly. No, Rachel said gently. They're honest. The word hung between them. In the booth, Michael closed his eyes briefly. He knew what was coming next. Not applause, not outrage, something slower, more dangerous. Understanding. The kind that doesn't go away when the lights turn off. The silence didn't break all at once. It fractured. A whisper here, a chair scraping there, a ripple of movement spreading through the audience like a slow wave, realizing it was allowed to exist. People looked at each other instead of the stage, now searching for confirmation that they had all heard the same thing. That the crack in Lauren Whitmore's voice hadn't been imagined. That the moment hadn't been staged. Lauren stood rigid, microphone lowered, but still clutched tight, her chest rising too fast. She hadn't missed a note like that in public in decades. Not since before the tour buses. Before the producers learned how to fix things in post. Her eyes flicked again toward the booth. Michael Harris didn't look away. From his seat behind the glass, he watched Lauren the way he'd learned to watch markets right before they collapsed. Not angry, not smug, just alert. Ready. Rachel remained where she was, hands relaxed at her sides. Now the tension drained from her posture, as if the hardest part had already passed. She hadn't planned what came next. She hadn't needed to. The truth once spoken tended to move on its own. Lauren recovered first. She always did. She forced a breath, then another, and turned back to the audience with a thin smile. Well, she said lightly, that's what happens when you sing without warming up. A few nervous laughs answered her. Habit. Reflex. Rachel shook her head once, small, almost kind. "No," she said. "That's what happens when you sing alone." The laughter died. Lauren's smile faltered again. "Security," she said sharply, not looking away from Rachel. Two ushers near the aisle hesitated. They glanced toward the event coordinator who stood frozen near the wings phone pressed to her ear, eyes darting between the stage and the booth. Rachel didn't flinch. She stepped forward instead, stopping just short of the edge of the stage. "I'm not here to cause a scene," she said, voice steady. "I'm here because you made one." Lauren turned on her, heat flashing through the polish. "You don't get to hijack my event," she snapped. "You don't get to rewrite history because you're feeling brave tonight." Rachel met her gaze. "I'm not rewriting anything," she said. "I'm remembering it. Out loud." In the audience, a woman in the third row lifted her phone, then lowered it unsure. A man beside her muttered, "Is this real?" Someone else whispered, "They're live." Up in the booth, Michael's phone vibrated. A message from legal. "Watching. Do not disengage," he typed back. "Audio remains clean. No alterations." On stage, Lauren took a step closer to Rachel, dropping her voice. "You think this helps you?" she hissed. "You think anyone here is going to believe a janitor over me?" Rachel's eyes softened, just a fraction. "I don't need them to believe me," she said. "I need them to listen." Lauren laughed, sharp and humorless. "Listen to what? A story, a grievance from 20 years ago." 18, Rachel corrected calmly. "And it's not a story. It's a pattern." That word landed differently. Lauren straightened, sensing the shift, and turned back to the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, spreading her hands, "this is exactly why we have professionals. Contracts, systems, because memories fade, feelings distort." Rachel nodded. "That's true," she said, "which is why I didn't come here with memories." Lauren's head snapped back toward her. "What did you bring then?" Rachel lifted her chin. "A voice you never paid for, and a trail you forgot to erase." The room went still again. From the booth, Michael leaned forward, fingers poised over the console. He hadn't told Rachel about the archives yet. He hadn't had time, but he recognized the moment, the point of no return. He'd seen it in whistleblower hearings, in boardrooms when someone finally stopped protecting the wrong people. Lauren scoffed. "You're bluffing." Rachel didn't answer. She turned instead toward the booth. Michael felt every eye in the room pivot upward. He adjusted his headset and spoke. His voice carried clean and clear through the house speakers. For the record, he said evenly, "This feed is unaltered." A murmur surged. Lauren's face drained of color. "Who is that?" she demanded. Michael didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Michael Harris," he said. "Chief Executive Officer of Harris Stream Systems. We handle the broadcast." And Lauren snapped. And Michael continued, "My company acquired a regional audio archive from Nashville 12 years ago as part of a defunct studio merger. Those files are still intact." Rachel closed her eyes briefly. Relief washed through her, sharp and unexpected. Lauren's breath hitched. "This is absurd," she said. "You can't." "We can," Michael replied. "And we have." The audience erupted then. Not applause, not yet. Noise, voices overlapping, questions shouted. A man near the aisle stood. "Is this true?" he called out. Lauren turned on Michael. "You have no right to discuss internal data." Michael's expression didn't change. "I have every right to acknowledge its existence when coercion occurs on a live feed." The word coercion hung in the air. Lauren laughed again, but this time it rang hollow. "You're accusing me now." Michael nodded once. "Yes." The event coordinator rushed on stage, whispering urgently to Lauren. Lauren waved her off, eyes never leaving the booth. Rachel watched it all with a strange detachment. The fear she had carried for years felt distant now, like a storm that had finally moved past. She was tired, but steady. Lauren turned back to her voice, low, venomous. "You have no idea what you're doing," she said. "You think this ends well for you?" Rachel met her gaze. "I think it ends honest." Lauren leaned in close, her breath hot. "Your sister's file is still under review." Rachel's jaw tightened, the first real crack in her calm. Michael heard it through the feed, heard the threat beneath the words. He straightened. "That," he said sharply, "is exactly the problem." The room quieted again. Rachel inhaled slowly. She thought of Emily's laugh, of the way she always said, "Whatever happens, we'll deal with it together." Rachel opened her eyes and looked out at the audience. "I don't know how this ends," she said. "I know what it costs to stay quiet. I've paid that price. For years." Lauren scoffed. "Spare us the martyr speech." Rachel ignored her. "If anyone here believes this is just about me," she continued, "it's not. It's about who gets erased when money decides whose voice matters." A woman in the front row wiped at her eyes. An older man nodded slowly. Lauren stepped back, shaking her head. "This is a witch hunt." Michael's voice cut through, calm and unyielding. "No," he said. "It's an audit." That word landed like a gavel. Lauren stared up at the booth, her mouth opening then closing. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Security finally moved, but not toward Rachel. Toward the wings. Toward the exits. The coordinator whispered frantically into her phone. Rachel felt a hand brush hers. The young assistant from earlier. The girl's eyes were wide, shining. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Rachel squeezed her hand once. "Don't be." Lauren backed away slowly, the stage lights glaring now, unforgiving. She looked out at the crowd, searching for allies for control. She found none. Michael removed his headset. His work here was done for the night. The rest would be lawyers. Regulators. Time. On stage, Rachel stood alone under the chandeliers, the weight of the room pressing down, but not crushing her. Not anymore. She hadn't planned to be brave. She had planned to survive. Sometimes she realized the two were closer than people like to admit. Lauren Whitmore left the stage without bowing. She didn't run. She didn't rage. She walked off with her spine straight and her head high, the way she had been trained to exit rooms when the applause turned uncertain. The lights followed her for half a second too long before snapping back to center, revealing what she left behind. Rachel was still standing there. The applause never came. What filled the theater instead was something older and heavier. The sound of people reassessing what they thought they knew. The sound of trust shifting underfoot. Rachel felt the heat of the lights on her face. Her palms were damp. Her legs trembled now that the worst of it had passed. She kept her feet planted anyway. A man in the front row stood slowly. Late 60s. Navy blazer. Veteran's posture. He didn't clap. He didn't shout. He just spoke, voice carrying farther than he expected. "Is she telling the truth?" The question landed with weight. Rachel opened her mouth, then closed it. She hadn't prepared for this part. For the moment after the rupture when the crowd looked not for drama, but for direction. Michael Harris pressed a button in the booth. The house lights lifted slightly, softening the glare. He didn't want her blinded. He didn't want this to feel like an interrogation. "Yes," he said, his voice steady through the speakers. "She is." A low murmur spread. Heads turned, some toward Rachel, some toward the booth, some toward the exits, calculating what this meant for them. Rachel exhaled slowly. She hadn't asked Michael to do that, but she was grateful. "I didn't come here to accuse," she said. "I came because I was pushed." A woman near the aisle shook her head, stunned. "My God," she whispered. From the wings, the event coordinator reappeared pale, her phone clutched tight. She leaned toward Rachel, voice urgent. "We need to pause," she said. "We need to cut to intermission." Rachel looked at her, saw the fear, the instinct to contain, to smooth, to protect the institution. "Give me 1 minute," Rachel said quietly. The coordinator hesitated, then nodded. She stepped back. Rachel turned back to the audience. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "I worked in studios where my name never mattered," she said. "I sang into microphones that weren't mine. I signed papers I didn't understand because I was told everyone did. And when I realized what had been taken, I was told to be grateful." She paused. Her chest tightened. She forced herself to breathe through it. "I don't expect sympathy," she continued. "I expect honesty. From all of us." Michael watched the crowd carefully. He saw the shift. The donors who had come to be seen now leaning back, arms crossed, thinking. The retired professionals who had spent lifetimes navigating systems suddenly recognizing the shape of one. Rachel felt it too. The energy changing. This wasn't outrage yet. It was something more dangerous. Recognition. A man near the back raised his voice. "Why now?" he asked. "Why wait all these years?" Rachel nodded. She had asked herself the same question countless times. "Because silence is cheaper," she said. Until it isn't. She glanced toward the wings where Lauren had disappeared. And because sometimes the cost gets passed to people you love. That landed. The room fell quiet again. Michael's phone vibrated. A text from his general counsel. "We're exposed now." He typed back. "We were already exposed. We just didn't know it." On stage, Rachel stepped back from the microphone. Her hands shook openly now. She didn't hide it. The coordinator moved quickly, signaling the orchestra pit. Intermission music swelled soft but insistent. The lights came up fully. People stood. Not to leave. To talk. Small clusters formed. Phones came out. Conversations sparked. Rachel took a step toward the wings, then stopped. Her knees felt weak. A hand steadied her arm. It was the older man from the front row. Up close, she saw the lines in his face. The careful way he moved. "You were brave," he said quietly. Rachel shook her head. "I was cornered." He nodded. "Most people are when it finally happens." She managed a small smile. Backstage, the atmosphere was electric. Crew members whispered. Someone cried. Someone else laughed nervously. Lauren's dressing room door was closed. A security guard stood outside now, not to protect her from the crowd, but to control the flow. Rachel leaned against the wall, her breath coming shallow. The assistant from earlier hovered nearby, eyes wide. "Are you okay?" she asked. Rachel nodded, though she wasn't sure it was true. "I will be." Michael appeared moments later. In person, he seemed taller than he had on the screens. Solid, unhurried. "You didn't have to say that," Rachel said softly. He met her gaze. "You shouldn't have had to say any of it alone." She studied him. This man who had stepped in without theatrics, who hadn't tried to own the moment. "What happens now?" she asked. Michael didn't sugarcoat it. "Now it gets complicated." She let out a quiet laugh. "I figured." He glanced toward the dressing room. "Lauren's attorney is already on the phone. The foundation board will want statements. There will be pressure." Rachel's stomach tightened, and my sister Michael's expression softened. No foundation can retaliate legally for this, and if they try, it only makes things worse for them. "That's not an answer," Rachel said. He nodded. "It's not. But it's the truth." Rachel closed her eyes briefly. The adrenaline was fading now, leaving exhaustion in its wake. "I didn't plan to do this," she said. "I just couldn't let her decide the price anymore." Michael watched her carefully. He saw not a hero but a woman at the edge of what she could carry. "You didn't break anything tonight," he said. "You revealed it." She looked at him. "Those files you mentioned?" she said. "They're real," he nodded. "Very. And my name." "On more than one," he said. "Enough to matter." Rachel swallowed. The weight of that settled slowly. Validation. Proof. And with it a new kind of fear. Lauren's door opened then. Her lawyer stepped out, phone still pressed to his ear. He glanced at Rachel, eyes sharp assessing. Lauren followed a moment later. Up close, without the lights, she looked older, tired. The polish cracked. "This isn't over," Lauren said quietly, stopping a few feet away. Rachel met her gaze. "I know." Lauren's eyes flicked to Michael. "You think you're a hero?" Michael didn't respond. Lauren laughed once, bitter. "This industry eats people like her," she said. "You think pulling one thread changes that Rachel spoke before Michael could? I think it shows where the seams are." Lauren stared at her for a long moment. Then she turned and walked away again, heels clicking down the hall, each step sharp and measured. Rachel sagged against the wall as the adrenaline finally left her. Her legs nearly gave out. Michael steadied her without making a show of it. "Go home," he said. "Tonight." She nodded. Tomorrow, he said, "we decide what comes next." As Rachel walked toward the exit past the crew and the whispers and the cameras she knew were waiting outside, she felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Not relief, not victory, space. For the first time in years, the silence around her wasn't imposed. It was chosen. Morning came without mercy. Rachel woke to the sound of her phone vibrating against the nightstand again and again, a mechanical insect that refused to die. The clock read 6:17 in the morning. Outside, Chicago was gray and wet, the kind of early spring day that smelled like cold concrete and old rain. She didn't answer. She lay there instead, staring at the ceiling of her small apartment, listening to the building wake up around her. Pipes knocking. A door slamming somewhere down the hall. A neighbor's television already murmuring with the low cadence of morning news. Her phone buzzed again. Rachel reached for it, this time more out of resignation than curiosity. The screen was a wall of missed calls, unknown numbers stacked like accusations. Text messages from co-workers, from a cousin she hadn't spoken to in years, from someone labeled simply media inquiry. She locked the phone and set it face down. The quiet after that felt fragile, temporary. She swung her legs out of bed and stood the floor cold under her feet. Her body ached in places she hadn't noticed the night before. Adrenaline had masked it then. Now everything hurt. Her shoulders, her jaw, her chest tight in a way that had nothing to do with lungs. In the kitchen, she poured coffee she didn't want and stared out the window at the alley below. A delivery truck idled. A man smoked beside a dumpster collar pulled up against the wind. Life, unimpressed by what she'd done, moved on. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Emily. Rachel answered on the second ring. "Hey!" she said, trying to sound normal. There was a pause on the other end. "What did you do?" Emily asked. Rachel closed her eyes. "I didn't mean for you to find out like this," she said. "I didn't find out," Emily replied. "The hospital called. They asked if I was related to you. They sounded careful." Rachel's stomach dropped. "Careful how? Like people do when they're suddenly aware of liability," Emily said. "Rach." "What happened last night?" Rachel leaned against the counter. The edge dug into her back. "I told the truth," she said. Emily was quiet for a moment. Rachel imagined her sitting on the edge of her bed, hair still messy, one hand pressed to her chest, the way she did when she was anxious. "You went on television," Emily said finally. "Yes. You stood up to a woman with more money than God?" Emily continued. "Yes. And you didn't call me first." Rachel swallowed. "I didn't want to scare you." Emily let out a short laugh. Too late. Rachel waited for the anger, for the fear, for the inevitable question she had been dreading. Instead, Emily said, "I'm proud of you." Rachel's knees weakened. She slid into a chair, gripping the edge of the table. "You shouldn't be," Rachel said. "This could get ugly." "It was already ugly," Emily replied. "You just turned the lights on." Rachel stared at the coffee growing cold in front of her. She hadn't realized how badly she needed to hear that. A knock sounded at the door. Sharp. Insistent. Rachel froze. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Today." "I have to go," Rachel said quietly. "Are you safe?" Emily asked. "For now. Call me after," Emily said. "No matter what." Rachel promised she would, then hung up. The knock came again, louder. Rachel approached the door, slowly peering through the peephole. A man in a tailored suit stood in the hallway, leather briefcase at his side. His expression was pleasant in the way that suggested training. She didn't open the door. "Ms. Miller," the man called. "This is Jonathan Price. I represent Lauren Whitmore." Rachel's chest tightened. "I don't have anything to say," she replied through the door. "We're not here to argue," Jonathan said smoothly. "We're here to resolve." Rachel almost laughed. "At 6:30 in the morning. There's urgency now," he said. "On all sides." Rachel leaned her forehead briefly against the door, then straightened. "You can leave," she said. Jonathan sighed. "Ms. Miller, what happened last night has consequences. Public accusations, business interference, emotional distress." Rachel opened the door a crack, just enough to see him clearly. "You mean embarrassment?" she said. His smile thinned. "Words matter." "So does timing," Rachel replied. "You picked the wrong one." Jonathan studied her, reassessing. "May I come in?" "No." He nodded as if he'd expected that. He opened his briefcase anyway and slid a document toward the gap, then read this. Rachel glanced down. Numbers jumped out immediately. More money than she'd seen in her life. Her throat tightened. "This is a settlement offer," Jonathan said. "Immediate. No admission of wrongdoing. You issue a clarification. We all move forward." Rachel stared at the page. Her hands shook. "How did you get my address?" she asked. Jonathan's expression didn't change. "You're not invisible anymore." The words sent a chill through her. "I need time," Rachel said. Jonathan shook his head. "You don't have it." She thought of Emily, of the hospital call, of the foundation committee that would now be reviewing everything she touched. Rachel pushed the document back with her foot. "You should go," she said. Jonathan hesitated, then gathered his papers. "This offer won't improve," he said quietly. "And it won't be the last contact you receive today." Rachel closed the door and locked it, her hands trembling. Her phone rang immediately. "Michael Harris." She answered without thinking. "They're already here," she said. "I know," Michael replied. His voice was calm, grounded. "He came to my office first." Rachel closed her eyes. "Of course he did. I told him all communication goes through counsel now," Michael said. "I'm sending you a number. Use it. I can't afford—" "You don't need to," Michael cut in gently. "Not today." Rachel sank back into the chair. The room felt smaller than it had an hour ago. "Michael," she said, choosing her words carefully. "I didn't do this to be rescued." "I know," he said. "That's why I'm helping." She was quiet. "There's something else," Michael continued. "The archive. I went deeper after you left." Rachel's heart picked up speed. And your voice appears on 8 tracks, he said. Not background. Lead guides. Structurally critical. Rachel closed her eyes. 8. She had remembered 3. They were never meant to disappear, Michael said. They were meant to be repackaged. Rachel felt a strange mix of validation and grief settle over her. What happens now? Now, Michael said, they'll try to scare you into silence. And when that doesn't work, they'll try to discredit you. Rachel looked around her kitchen, the chipped counter, the stack of medical bills pinned to the fridge. I'm not strong enough for that, she said quietly. Michael paused. You don't have to be strong, he said. You just have to stay standing. Another knock sounded down the hall. Not on her door, someone else's. Voices murmured. Rachel breathed in slowly, grounding herself in the physical world. The weight of the chair, the smell of coffee, the sound of her own breath. Okay, she said finally. What do you need from me? Michael's answer was immediate. Honesty and patience. She nodded even though he couldn't see it. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, fading as they passed. The city kept moving. The story was already bigger than her now. Rachel picked up the settlement offer from the floor and folded it carefully. Not to accept it. To remember it. She wasn't invisible anymore, and that she realized was both the danger and the point. The first headline broke before noon. Rachel saw it on a muted television in the waiting room of a cardiology clinic, the caption crawling beneath a smiling photo of Lauren Whitmore, taken years ago, all teeth and light. Allegations at charity gala spark controversy. The word allegations pulsed like a bruise. Rachel turned the volume up just enough to hear the anchor's careful cadence. Balanced, neutral, every sentence padded with qualifiers. She watched the way language softened impact, the way it kept doors open for people who could afford them. Her phone vibrated. A message from Michael. They're framing it as a misunderstanding. That's expected, she typed back. What about Emily? A pause. Then hospital confirmed her consult is still on. No changes. Rachel exhaled slowly and leaned back in the plastic chair. The room smelled like antiseptic and old magazines. A couple across from her held hands without speaking. On the wall, a framed print of a lake at sunset tried very hard to be calming. A nurse called a name, not hers. Rachel's phone vibrated again this time with a number she didn't recognize. She let it ring out. She thought of the settlement offer folded in her kitchen drawer. The clean promise of it. The lie wrapped in relief. She imagined signing her name and watching the noise die down. She imagined Emily's surgery scheduled without delay. She imagined sleeping through a night without sirens or phone calls. She also imagined the quiet after that, the kind that presses in heavy permanent. The clinic door opened. Emily stepped out face pale but determined, her coat draped over one arm. When she saw Rachel, she smiled small and genuine. You didn't have to come, she said. Rachel stood and hugged her. I did. They sat together. Emily's hands were cold. Rachel rubbed them the way she had when they were kids, and winter came early. They asked me questions, Emily said softly. About you, about work, about whether anyone had contacted me. Rachel nodded. And I told them the truth, Emily said. That my sister tells the truth even when it costs her. Rachel swallowed. I'm sorry you're in this. Emily shrugged. I've been in worse. Rachel smiled despite herself. Across town, Michael Harris sat in a glass-walled conference room with his general counsel and a man from compliance who took notes with surgical precision. On the table lay a slim folder labeled Archive Review. Michael kept his hands flat on the surface, grounding himself. They're going to challenge standing, the counsel said. They'll say Ms. Miller waived rights, that the files are derivative. Michael nodded. And we'll show intent. Patterns. Metadata trails. The compliance officer looked up. We've identified inconsistencies in Lauren Whitmore's catalog. Vocal signatures that don't match her known range across multiple tracks. Michael allowed himself a thin smile. How many 8 confirmed, the officer said. 2 more pending. Michael leaned back. Good. Prepare a memo. Quietly. Quietly, counsel echoed. Michael's phone buzzed. Rachel again. At the clinic. Emily's okay, he replied. Good. Stay there. I'll handle the noise. By mid-afternoon, the noise multiplied. A statement from Lauren's label dropped polished and precise. They expressed concern. They reaffirmed trust. They rejected allegations. They hinted at legal remedies without naming them. Then came the op-ed. A former producer. Anonymous. He wrote about difficult women, about ambition, about the cost of bitterness. The subtext was clear. Rachel read it on her phone while waiting at a crosswalk. She felt the heat rise in her chest, the familiar urge to shrink. She let the feeling pass. At home, she set a kettle on the stove and opened her laptop. Michael had sent a link. Deposition prep, tomorrow morning. The words made her stomach twist. She clicked. A video window opened. Michael's face appeared composed as ever, with 2 others beside him. A woman in her 40s with steel-gray hair and kind eyes. A younger man with a legal pad. This is Claire Donovan, Michael said. Counsel. And Evan. Claire smiled. Rachel, thank you for trusting us. Rachel nodded. I don't know how to do this. You don't need to, Claire said. You need to be yourself. They walked her through it. The questions, the traps, the places where silence would be used against her. They told her to pause, to breathe, to say I don't know when she didn't. They told her what not to do. Don't perform. Don't apologize. Don't speculate. Rachel listened. She took notes she didn't look at. Her hands shook less than she expected. After the call, she sat alone in her kitchen, the kettle forgotten, the light fading. The city outside her window hummed with indifference. Her phone rang again. Unknown number. She answered this time. Rachel Miller, she said. Ms. Miller, a woman's voice replied, smooth and practiced. This is Lydia Kane. I represent the foundation. Rachel's jaw tightened. What do you want? A conversation, Lydia said. Off the record. There is no off the record, Rachel replied. A pause, then a softer tone. We're concerned about your sister. Rachel closed her eyes. Don't. We can expedite her case, Lydia continued. We can ensure coverage through an alternative program. Rachel felt the anger sharpen into something clear. In exchange for what clarity, Lydia said. A statement. Nothing dramatic. Rachel's voice was steady. Put it in writing. Lydia hesitated. That wouldn't be appropriate. Then neither is this call, Rachel said and hung up. She stared at the phone, heart racing. She waited for regret to follow. It didn't. That night, the second twist hit. Michael called just before midnight. We found something, he said. Rachel sat up. What kind of something? An internal memo, Michael replied. From the defunct Nashville studio. Pre-merger. It references a cost-saving strategy. Reassigning guide vocals to a marquee artist to accelerate release timelines. Rachel felt cold. They planned it. Yes, Michael said. And they tracked it. Silence stretched. This changes the posture, Michael continued. They'll try to bury it. Rachel nodded even though he couldn't see her. Then we don't let them. Exactly. The next morning, the deposition room smelled like coffee and carpet cleaner. A long table, a camera, a stack of files. Rachel sat straight-backed, hands folded, Claire beside her. Lauren entered last. Up close, Rachel saw the strain etched into her face, the careful application of confidence like a second skin. Lauren didn't look at Rachel. She took her seat and stared at the wall. The oath was administered. The camera light clicked on. Questions began. Rachel answered slowly, clearly. She described the sessions, the rooms, the phrases she'd been told. She didn't embellish, she didn't falter. Then Lauren's attorney leaned forward. "Ms. Miller," he said, "isn't it true you're motivated by money?" Rachel met his gaze. "No." "By revenge?" "No." "By attention?" "No." "What then?" Rachel paused. She felt the room press in. She felt Emily's hand in hers from the day before. She felt the years she had swallowed words. "By the fact that what was taken from me kept other people quiet too," she said. "And that silence costs lives." The attorney scoffed. Lives? Rachel didn't look away. "My sisters," she said, "and others you'll never meet." A murmur rippled. Across the table, Lauren's fingers tightened. Claire placed a hand on Rachel's arm. "Just once." When it was over, Rachel stepped into the hallway and leaned against the cool wall. Her legs shook. She let them. Michael appeared a moment later. "You did well," he said. Rachel nodded. "I told the truth." He studied her, something like respect deepening. "There's one more thing," he said. Rachel braced herself. "The board asked me to step down from overseeing the stream contracts," Michael continued. "Conflict of interest." Rachel's heart dropped. "I'm sorry." He shook his head. "I'm not. I resigned." She stared at him. "Why?" "Because systems matter," he said, "and so do the people they serve." Rachel felt the weight of that settle between them. Not romance, not rescue. Alignment. Outside, the sky was bright and cold. The city moved on. The story did not. Rachel stepped forward into it, tired, steady, and no longer alone. The backlash didn't arrive like a wave. It crept in quiet and methodical. Rachel felt it first in the pauses, the way conversations stalled when she entered a room, the way phones stopped ringing after being so loud they'd shaken her nightstand. Silence returned, but this time it wasn't empty. It was watchful. 3 days after the deposition, she was taken off the schedule at the Hawthorne. No explanation. Just a polite email thanking her for her years of service and informing her that her access badge had been deactivated pending review. Pending review was the phrase institutions used when they wanted time to decide how much damage control would cost. Rachel read the message twice, then closed her laptop. She didn't cry. She had cried enough over the years to know when tears would be wasted. Emily was on the couch when she came out of the bedroom, wrapped in a blanket, daytime television murmuring in the background. They called Emily said. Rachel's chest tightened. "Who?" "The foundation," Emily replied. They postponed the decision, said they needed additional documentation. Rachel nodded slowly. There it was. Not retaliation. Just delay. Clean, legal, effective. "I can try another hospital," Emily added quickly. "We can—" "No," Rachel said more sharply than she intended. She softened her tone. "We'll wait." Emily studied her. "You're not scared." Rachel considered that. "I am," she said. "I'm just tired of letting it decide things." That afternoon, Michael called with an update that felt both promising and ominous. "The memo leaked," he said. "Not from us. Someone inside the label." Rachel closed her eyes. "What does it say?" "Enough," Michael replied. "Intent, pattern, knowledge at the executive level." And Lauren, a pause. "She's denying everything." Rachel almost smiled. Of course she was. The denial came that evening, delivered through a televised interview with a sympathetic host. Lauren sat angled toward the camera, soft lighting smoothing the lines in her face, voice carefully modulated. She spoke of misunderstandings, of collaboration, of artists helping artists. She never said Rachel's name. Rachel watched from the kitchen arms, folded coffee growing cold beside her. She recognized the performance, the deflection, the way Lauren framed herself as the injured party. Emily muted the television. "Do you want me to turn it off?" "No," Rachel said. "I want to remember how easy it looks." The next morning, the real twist began. It started with a voicemail. An older man's voice, unsteady but determined. "Ms. Miller," he said. "You don't know me. My name is Harold Bloom. I was an engineer at Apex Sound in Nashville. I saw you on the news. I think I owe you an apology." Rachel listened to it twice, then again. She called him back. Harold answered on the second ring, breathless, as if he'd been waiting by the phone. "I didn't think you would," he said. "Why now?" Rachel asked. "Because I'm 80, Harold replied. "And I don't want to die pretending I didn't hear what I heard." They spoke for an hour. He told her about late nights, about directives that came from above, about files labeled guides that were never meant to stay guides, about how everyone told themselves it was temporary, necessary, industry standard. "Did you ever say anything?" Rachel asked. "I tried," Harold said. "Once. I was told to either adjust my expectations or retire early." Rachel absorbed that quietly. "Would you be willing to say it again?" A long pause. Then, "Yes." By the end of the week, 2 more messages came in. A backing vocalist, a former assistant, different stories, same shape. Michael called that night, his voice tight with something like restrained awe. "It's spreading," he said, "not fast, but deep." Rachel leaned against the window, watching headlights slide past below. "People don't like being first," she said. "They like knowing they won't be alone." Across the city, Lauren felt the shift too. Her attorney's calls grew shorter. Her team grew quieter. The label postponed releases. Friends stopped returning messages. None of it was dramatic. That was the worst part. Power rarely collapsed with a bang. It thinned out, thread by thread. Lauren sat alone in her living room, scrolling through headlines that no longer felt friendly. She replayed the gala in her mind over and over, searching for the moment she'd lost control. She landed on Rachel's eyes, calm, unafraid, unimpressed. She hadn't seen that coming. Rachel received the subpoena the following Monday. Civil, formal, heavy with intent. She read it slowly, then placed it face down on the table. Emily watched her. "Is this bad?" "It's real," Rachel said. "That's different." They went to the hospital together that afternoon. Emily's cardiologist spoke carefully. Compassion layered over professionalism. "Your case is still under consideration," he said. "I want you to know that none of this affects your medical care." Rachel heard the caveat beneath the reassurance. She nodded anyway. In the hallway, Emily stopped her. "If this gets worse," she said quietly, "if they make it impossible?" Rachel turned to face her. "Then we adapt," she said. "Like we always have." That night, Rachel dreamed of a studio she hadn't seen in decades. The smell of dust and coffee. The red recording light. She woke before the song finished. The next morning, Michael asked her to meet him downtown. Not in an office. In a quiet diner near the river, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and servers who called everyone honey. They sat across from each other, mugs between them. "I need to tell you something," Michael said. Rachel waited. "The board wants to settle," he continued, quietly. "They're afraid of precedent." Rachel nodded. "Of course they are. They want you to sign an agreement limiting testimony, narrowing scope." Rachel looked out the window. The river moved slow and steady. "And you?" Michael met her gaze. "I want you to decide." She considered the weight of it, the exhaustion, the bills, the uncertainty. She thought of Harold's voice shaking as he spoke, of the assistant's wide eyes backstage, of Emily sleeping on the couch, trusting her. "I'm tired," Rachel said. Michael nodded. "I know. But I'm not done," she continued. A faint smile crossed his face. "That's what I thought." Outside, the diner door opened and closed, letting in a rush of cold air and the sound of traffic. Life went on indifferent to battles and brave moments. Rachel wrapped her hands around the mug, feeling the warmth seep into her palms. She didn't know how this would end. She knew only that retreat was no longer an option that made sense. For the first time, the story wasn't being told about her. It was being told with her. The hearing room smelled like paper and old wood. Rachel noticed it immediately the way some people noticed weather. The scent of bureaucracy, of decisions made slowly, deliberately behind closed doors. She sat at the narrow table, hands folded back, straight eyes forward. Not defiant, not submissive. Present. Across the room, Lauren Whitmore arrived with her attorney's heels quiet on polished floor expression, composed to the point of vacancy. She did not look at Rachel. She did not need to. In rooms like this, attention was currency, and Lauren had spent her life learning when to withhold it. Michael Harris sat 3 rows back, no longer wearing the invisible armor of a CEO. No title placard. No staff. Just a man with a notebook on his lap, and the patience of someone who understood systems from the inside. The chair of the review panel cleared her throat. "This proceeding concerns allegations of misrepresentation, coercion, and improper use of recorded material." Her voice was even, practiced. "Ms. Miller, you may begin." Rachel stood. The sound of her chair sliding back felt louder than it should have. She placed her palms lightly on the table, grounding herself in the grain of the wood. "I'm not here to talk about music," she said. "I'm here to talk about process." A murmur passed through the room. "For years, I believed what happened to me was personal," Rachel continued. "A bad decision, a bad contract, a powerful person behaving badly. I was wrong. It was procedural." Lauren's attorney shifted in his seat. Rachel went on. "I was hired to record guide vocals. I was told they were temporary. I was told they would never be released. I was told my signature meant nothing more than acknowledgement. That language mattered." She paused. The room waited. "Language always matters," Rachel said. She described the sessions, the memos, the clauses buried in dense paragraphs. She spoke without embellishment, without anger. She spoke like someone who had finally been given time. The panel listened. Some took notes. One man leaned back, arms crossed, eyes narrowed not in disbelief but in calculation. Lauren's counsel rose. "Ms. Miller," he said smoothly, "isn't it true that you benefited financially from these arrangements?" Rachel nodded. "I was paid $300 per session." "And you signed willingly?" "Yes." "And you waited nearly 2 decades to raise concerns." Rachel met his gaze. "I waited until I was no longer afraid to starve." The words landed hard. There it was, the line no one liked to cross. Survival. Lauren shifted for the first time. Her jaw tightened. The attorney tried again. "You're suggesting systemic wrongdoing based on your experience alone." Rachel shook her head. "No, I'm suggesting it based on pattern." She gestured toward the panel. "You have the files, the metadata, the memos. You have testimony from engineers who retired early, from assistants who were told not to ask questions, from vocalists whose names never appeared on anything." The chair raised a hand. "Ms. Miller, please confine yourself to what's comfortable," Rachel asked gently. The chair paused, then nodded. "Proceed." Rachel inhaled. "I don't want your sympathy. I want your attention. Because this didn't happen once. It happened until it worked. Across the room, Lauren's attorney whispered urgently to her. Lauren shook her head, eyes fixed on the panel, now assessing. When it was Lauren's turn, she stood with the grace of habit. "I have always collaborated," she said. "That is the nature of art." Rachel watched her. The phrasing, the distancing, the way responsibility dissolved into abstraction. Lauren continued. "I trusted my team. I trusted the system." Michael closed his eyes briefly. He had heard that sentence too many times in too many rooms. The panel asked questions. Lauren answered them carefully. She acknowledged nothing, denied nothing explicitly. It was a master class in evasion. Then the chair turned back to Rachel. "One final question," she said. "What do you want from this body?" Rachel considered. She thought of Emily's hands cold in the clinic waiting room, of Harold Bloom's trembling voice on the phone, of the assistant backstage who had whispered, "I'm sorry," without knowing why. "I want you to change how this works," Rachel said, "so the next person doesn't have to choose between telling the truth and paying their bills." The room went quiet. When the hearing adjourned, no one rushed Rachel. No cameras, no shouts, just the slow scrape of chairs and the rustle of coats. Michael caught up with her in the hallway. "You did exactly what they didn't expect," he said. Rachel exhaled, which was, "You made it boring," he replied, "and unavoidable." They walked together toward the exit. Sunlight spilled through tall windows, dust motes dancing in the air. Outside, reporters waited, but not aggressively. The frenzy had cooled. Now came the long attention, the kind that lasted. Rachel stopped at the top of the steps. She didn't speak. She didn't wave. She simply stood, letting them take their photos. That night she sat alone in her apartment, lights low, the city humming outside. She opened a notebook Michael had given her weeks ago. Blank pages. No agenda. She wrote one sentence at the top. Not a lyric, not a plan. "I told the truth today, and the world did not end." Her phone buzzed. "Emily!" Rachel answered. "Hey!" "They approved it," Emily said, breathless. Rachel's heart stuttered. "Approved what?" "The surgery. Full coverage. No delays." Rachel sank onto the couch, hand pressed to her mouth. She laughed once, sharp and surprised. "They said it was because of a new review process." Emily continued. "They didn't say your name. But I know." Rachel closed her eyes. "Me too." After they hung up, Rachel sat in the quiet, the notebook open on her lap. Relief washed through her, followed by something more complex. Not victory, not peace. Momentum. Somewhere across the city, Lauren watched the same news Rachel avoided. The panel's statement, the careful language, the absence of exoneration. She turned off the television and sat in silence, realizing for the first time that the system she had relied on was beginning to look back at her. Rachel stood and walked to the window. Below, cars moved steadily through the intersection, headlights cutting lines through the dark. She placed a hand against the glass, feeling the faint vibration of the city. For years, she had believed that telling the truth would shatter everything she needed to survive. Instead, it had rearranged it. And the story she knew now was no longer just about what had been taken from her. It was about what could no longer be hidden. The settlement offer arrived by courier on a Tuesday morning, thick paper-heavy envelope, the kind that assumed its own authority. Rachel didn't open it right away. She let it sit on the kitchen table while she made coffee, while the kettle screamed and the window rattled with traffic below. She watched steam rise, disappear, then return over and over until the ritual steadied her breathing. Emily was still asleep on the couch, a blanket tucked under her chin, one hand curled protectively over her chest. Surgery was scheduled for next week. Real. On the calendar. No asterisks. Rachel finally sat down and slid a finger under the envelope flap. The number was large, larger than anything she had ever earned in a year, larger than the sum total of every unpaid hour, every stolen note, every silent compromise. The language was careful, almost polite. No admission of wrongdoing. Mutual resolution. Finality. At the bottom, a line waited for her signature. Her phone buzzed as if on cue. Michael. They sent it, he said when she answered. I know. They want this over before the board vote next month. Rachel glanced toward the couch. They want control back. Yes. She traced the edge of the paper with her thumb. What happens if I sign? Michael didn't rush his answer. You get money, privacy, closure on their terms. And if I don't? A fight, he said. Longer, messier, public. Rachel closed her eyes. She could already feel the weight of it. The headlines that would come back. The exhaustion. The waiting. I'm tired, she said. I know, Michael replied. She looked at Emily again. Thought of the hospital room. The quiet beeping machines. The way relief would feel like oxygen once the surgery was done. Come over, Michael said. Not to decide. Just to talk. They met at his apartment overlooking the river, a modest place for a man who could afford more. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Books stacked in careful disorder. No art on the walls yet, as if he'd never quite settled. Rachel handed him the envelope. Michael read it without expression, then set it aside. They're afraid, he said. Of me? Rachel asked. Of precedent, he answered. Of losing the ability to make this go away next time. Rachel walked to the window. The river moved slow and patient below, carrying debris and reflections alike. What would you do? She asked. Michael joined her. He didn't answer immediately. I would ask myself what I could live with when no one was watching, he said. Rachel nodded. That was the right question. The one she'd been circling for weeks. That evening, Lauren Whitmore made her own calculations. She sat at a long table in a quiet restaurant, untouched food cooling in front of her, her attorney speaking in low, precise sentences. The room smelled of wine and polished wood. She's isolated, he said. No union, no label backing. She can't afford a prolonged trial. Lauren stared into her glass. She already couldn't, she said. That didn't stop her. The attorney hesitated. This offer is generous. If she refuses, we escalate. Lauren's fingers tightened around the stem. Do it, she said. I'm not losing everything to a nobody who learned to talk. The words tasted wrong even as she said them. Back at Rachel's apartment, the phone rang again. A new number. She answered. Rachel Miller. Ms. Miller, the woman on the line said smoothly. This is Lydia Kane. Rachel's jaw tightened. I'm listening. We believe this matter can be resolved quietly, Lydia said. Without further harm to your family. Rachel closed her eyes. Stop mentioning my family. A pause. We're trying to help. No, Rachel said. You're trying to contain. Another pause. Longer this time. If you proceed, Lydia said carefully, there will be scrutiny on your finances, your past statements, your credibility. Rachel felt the old fear stir then settle. Do what you need to do, she said. She hung up before Lydia could respond. That night, Rachel couldn't sleep. She lay awake, listening to Emily's breathing, counting each rise and fall, the way she used to when they were younger. When dawn finally crept in, she knew what she had to do. She called Michael before 8. I'm not signing, she said. He didn't sound surprised. Okay. They'll come harder. Yes. And this won't end clean. No. Rachel exhaled. Then let's finish it properly. The next weeks blurred into preparation. Depositions scheduled, motions filed, journalists digging deeper, not louder, patterns emerging, names connecting. Harold Bloom gave sworn testimony. So did the backing vocalist. So did the former assistant. The story widened not through spectacle but through accumulation. Lauren's label postponed indefinitely. Sponsors withdrew quietly. Invitations stopped arriving. The night before Emily's surgery, Rachel sat alone in the hospital chapel, the settlement offer folded in her coat pocket like a ghost. She took it out, read it one last time, then tore it cleanly in half. She felt nothing dramatic, just calm. The surgery went long. Rachel paced. Michael sat with her silent steady. When the doctor finally came out smiling tiredly, Rachel's knees nearly gave way. "She's going to be fine," he said. Rachel cried then. Not loudly, not neatly. Michael didn't touch her. He just stayed. Across town, Lauren watched the same news Rachel ignored. Another witness. Another document unsealed, the slow erosion of certainty. She poured herself a drink and didn't finish it. Months later, the case didn't end with a verdict. It ended with a reckoning. The board voted. New guidelines announced. Retroactive credits issued. Settlements offered to others who came forward this time with transparency. Lauren issued a statement that said very little and meant even less. Rachel watched it on her phone, sitting on the edge of Emily's hospital bed, both of them lighter now. "It's over," Emily said. Rachel shook her head gently. "It's different." That night, Rachel stood in her kitchen, the city quiet beyond the glass. She opened the notebook again, the one she'd filled slowly over weeks. On a new page, she wrote, "I didn't win. I stood." She closed the book. The story had taken its toll. It always did. But it had also given something back. Not a career, not revenge. A voice that no longer needed permission to exist. Rachel learned the sound of recovery slowly. It wasn't applause or headlines or the satisfying thud of a door finally closed. It was the quiet rhythm of Emily's breathing in the hospital room, steady and unremarkable, the way normal always sounded when you'd spent too long listening for alarms. It was the shuffle of nurses changing shifts, the muted beeps that no longer signaled danger, ordinary noise returning to claim its place. Emily slept most of the first day after surgery, her face pale but peaceful, one hand curled loosely on the blanket. Rachel sat beside her, fingers wrapped around a paper cup of coffee she kept forgetting to drink. She watched the rise and fall of her sister's chest and felt something inside her loosen just a little. Michael stopped by in the afternoon. No suit, no urgency. He stood quietly at the foot of the bed, respectful present. "She looks strong," he said. "She always was," Rachel replied. They didn't talk about the case. They didn't talk about Lauren or the board or the new policies announced that morning. They let the silence do its work. Weeks passed. The world adjusted in small bureaucratic ways. New guidelines circulated, credits were revised, compensation funds were established quietly without fanfare. Some people apologized. Most didn't. Institutions rarely did anything all the way. Rachel didn't go back to the Hawthorne. She didn't want to. She found work instead at a community arts center on the South Side, cleaning studios in the mornings and helping organize after-school programs in the afternoons. It paid less. It felt lighter. One evening, as she was stacking chairs, a teenage girl hovered nearby, watching her with open curiosity. "You're the lady from the news," the girl said. Rachel smiled faintly. "I'm just the lady who locks up," she replied. The girl hesitated, then said, "I heard you sing." Rachel paused. "Where?" "At the gala," the girl said. "My aunt showed me the clip." Rachel nodded. "That wasn't really singing." The girl shrugged. It sounded real. Rachel took that with her all the way home. Michael called less often now. When he did, it was never about strategy. It was about books he was reading, about a non-profit he was advising, about the strange feeling of stepping away from a company he'd built and realizing he could still breathe. One afternoon, he handed Rachel a small envelope across a diner table. Inside was a keycard. "What's this?" she asked. "Studio access," he said. "A place downtown. It's quiet. No contracts, no labels, no expectations." Rachel studied the card, then looked up. "I'm not going back to that life." Michael nodded. "I know. This isn't that." She slipped the card into her pocket and didn't think about it again for days. Emily came home just before Thanksgiving. She moved slowly, carefully, as if learning a new version of her body. Rachel cooked too much food. They ate it over several days, grateful and exhausted. On the fourth night, Emily said, "You don't hum anymore." Rachel looked up from the sink. "I didn't notice." "You used to," Emily continued. "All the time." Rachel dried her hands. "Maybe I was tired of hearing myself." Emily smiled. "Or maybe you're waiting." Rachel didn't answer. She went to the studio the following Tuesday. The building was old, the elevator temperamental. The room itself was simple. A piano, a microphone, a window looking out over brick and sky. She stood there for a long time without touching anything. When she finally sang, it wasn't loud. It wasn't careful either. It was just sound moving through her body the way it always had before it learned to ask permission. She sang until her throat felt warm, then stopped. No one applauded. No one needed to. News of Lauren Whitmore faded in the way scandals always did, replaced by something newer, louder. Her catalog remained available, footnotes, appended credits amended. She retreated from public life not dramatically, but decisively. The industry closed ranks around its own wounds and moved on. Rachel didn't watch any of it. She attended a small ceremony at the community center instead, where a new scholarship was announced for session musicians. No speeches, no cameras, just a handful of people standing in a circle nodding to one another. Michael stood at the backhands in his pockets. Afterward, as they walked out into the cold evening air, he said, "You know this didn't end the way people like to tell stories." Rachel smiled. "That's probably a good thing." They stood there a moment watching traffic crawl past. The city felt steady beneath their feet. "What will you do now?" Michael asked. Rachel considered the question. Not as a challenge, as an invitation. "I'll keep living," she said. "I'll keep telling the truth when it matters. I'll sing when I want to." He nodded. "That sounds right." That winter passed quietly. Rachel taught herself how to rest, how to say no, how to let joy arrive without interrogating it. She filled her notebook with fragments, not lyrics, just thoughts she didn't want to lose. On the anniversary of the gala, she stood in her kitchen listening to the city settle into night. She thought about the woman she had been then, afraid, cornered, ready to disappear. She thought about the woman she was now, tired, whole, unhidden. The difference wasn't fame or money or vindication. It was the absence of permission, the understanding that her voice didn't need it. Rachel turned off the light and went to bed, the ordinary comfort of her life settling around her like a well-worn coat. If this story stayed with you, if it reminded you that truth can be quiet and still change everything, take a moment to like and subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments with 3 simple words: tell your truth.